This is the eLearn podcast. If you're passionate about the future of learning, you're in the right place. The expert guests on this show provide insights into the latest strategies, practices, and technologies for creating killer online learning outcomes. My name's Ladek, and I'm your host from OpenLMS. The eLearn podcast is sponsored by eLearn Magazine, your go-to resource for all things online learning. Click-by-click how-to articles, the latest in edtech, spotlight on successful outcomes and trends in the marketplace. Subscribe today and never miss a post at elearnmagazine.com. And OpenLMS, a company leveraging open source software to deliver effective, customized, and engaging learning experiences for schools, universities, companies, and governments around the world since 2005. Learn more at openlms.net. Hello, my name's Ladek, and my guest for this episode is Cammy Bean. Cammy started as a junior instructional designer in 1996 and has since collaborated with hundreds of organizations to design and deliver training. In 2009, she helped start up U.S. operations for Kineo, a global provider of learning solutions. She currently leads the North American sales team, supports clients through the initial discovery process, and manages a portfolio of custom client accounts to help organizations meet their strategic business objectives through better learning solutions. She's also the author of The Accidental Instructional Designer, Learning Design for the Digital Age, which is in its second edition from ATD Press. In this somewhat accidental conversation, Cammy and I discuss how the role of the instructional designer has come of age, especially post-pandemic, and why, after many years, she's still passionate about the profession. Cammy then talks about how her book counsels people to follow their passion and start a career that honors those passions. We also discuss the pros and cons of specializing versus remaining a generalist. Then we discuss how Cammy works through challenges with projects and with clients, and some of those usual things that you see in every project. Cammy then provides her perspective and advice for early career professionals and what she sees happening in the near future for the instructional design profession. And remember, we record this podcast live so that we can interact with you, our listeners, in real time. So if you'd like to join the fun every week on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on YouTube, just come over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe. Now, I give you Cammy Bean. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the eLearn podcast, and an especially warm welcome to Cammy Bean. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm awesome. Good to see you.
Wow, you're awesome. That's fantastic. Where do we find you in the world?
I am in Massachusetts, outside of Boston, about 23 miles northwest of the city of Boston.
What's the name of the city?
Littleton. No one's ever heard of it.
No. I don't know. I grew up next to a Littleton in Colorado, so I don't know.
Very good. Yes, it's a little town in Massachusetts.
That's awesome. I feel like there's like a Littleton in every state somewhere. It's like a little town.
There are many, yes.
Cammy, I'm psyched for this conversation because I feel like it's a beautiful departure from what I usually get to talk about, at least over the last 6 months, which is AI or, something deep in ed tech or, something that mashes up those things about oh my gosh, what's happening and how are we going to, save ourselves in this debacle of disruption that's going on.
Yeah.
Because we're going to talk about, how we stumble into these careers, right? How do we get there? And what do we do about that? And the reason why it's really, if I'm completely honest, near and dear to my heart is that in a former life, I worked in a different sector and I had this conversation over 15 years with everyone. It's like no one ever chose to be a part of what was the humanitarian and international development world, right? You just find yourself there one day and what do you do about it?
What?
But you are the author of a book called The Accidental Instructional Designer, right? Oops, sorry.
Yep.
Messed up the title there. But let me give you the stage. Tell us about yourself. Give us the 60 to 90 seconds on who you are and what you do and what you do for Kineo right now.
Yeah, sure. 60 to 90 seconds. All right, that's going to be tough because I like to talk. So I graduated from college in 1990 with a degree in English and German studies. I thought I would be a teacher. I wanted to be a writer. I had all these aspirations. I ended up getting a job at a company. And I somehow found my way into the training team, or into a training function, because we were designing software systems for this company. It was the first time anyone had used a computer. It was 1992, 1993, right? anyways, I eventually found my way then to that next job, which was at a, I guess, boutique e-learning shop, but we didn't even call it e-learning back then. We created CD-ROMs, and it seemed really glamorous and really exciting, and creating training and video and all this cool tech stuff. And I was going to get to write and teach. And I had Junior Instructional Designer on my card. And I was like, what is this field that I'm in? And that's just, here I am all these years later. I've worked in small boutique e-learning companies. I've worked as a freelancer. In 2009, I helped found Kineo US. Kineo is a global learning company that started in 2005 in the UK. I helped start our US operation as that instructional designer who had a lot of practical skills and abilities. And now 14 years later, I've been with Kineo for a while. I'm now the head of our sales team here in the US, like accidental salesperson. I mean, we all find ourselves like, what? So I didn't start from point A to point B. I never in a million years would I have told you I would have landed up doing sales for a learning design company. And a large part of what I do in the sales role is talk instructional design and learning design and L&D challenges and solutions and problems with people. Super
cool. Well, then, I mean, let's just be transparent here. What is Kineo? I want to know, like, what do you deliver that, give me the elevator pitch.
The elevator pitch. So we are a global learning solutions provider company. We specialize in digital learning. So my background was custom content, and that is what we do. We develop a lot of custom learning content for organizations. We also have an LMS product, which is based on Totra, which is an open source learning management system. And we do a lot with open source tools. So we have a lot of excitement around open things. Like you.
Why open? Why? Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are called Open LMS, right? I mean, it's in the name. Why are you passionate about open source? Like, what does that mean to you?
Well, and we forked off of it, but open source just puts the tools in the people's hands, right? So I remember when I first heard about Kineo back in 2006, they were experimenting with Moodle. And at the same time, the company I was working for was going to create a from scratch custom LMS for a company. I was like, this doesn't seem very smart. There's tools out there that you can leverage and you can customize and you can build on. So that's what Kineo created with Totra in collaboration with some other partners, was an open source LMS for the corporate space. And then we've done similar things with Adapt, which is an authoring tool. That's an open source, fully responsive HTML5 framework for creating really high-end custom learning content using Adapt, but it's an open source tool that anyone can get out there and use. We think that's pretty exciting.
Very cool. So take me to, you're on your second edition of your book, The Accidental Instructional Designer. It's it's a story that resonates with you and I. Let me ask you first, is it still true that, are you meeting people pretty regularly who are like, wow, I had no idea this was even a profession. Like I don't know how I got here. Or are you hearing more and more people are choosing this either as a career path, or they're like, wow, because e-learning now, post pandemic, it's kind of come of age.
Yes. Well, the answer is yes and yes. So, I walk into, I speak at conferences a lot. I was at a conference in July, an ATD conference called Core 4, which is really for people who are kind of getting started, foundational. Pretty much everyone in that room was, figuring it out for the first time. And what happens with many of us is you get tapped. You're part of an organization and you get tapped to be the training guy, or the training woman, as it may be, or the PowerPoint guru, or this, and suddenly training gets put on top of your, already full plate, and they say, you should be the instructional designer. So there's tons of people out there who are figuring this out for the first time accidentally because they have shown some skills, talent, capability. Maybe they have the subject matter expertise. Maybe they have the jazz hands and can talk in front of a crowd. Maybe they can, parse out the steps of a process in a really effective way. And, hey, you should be the trainer. You should do the instructional design at this company. So that happens all the time. And that's never going to stop, right? You see startups who are suddenly going, oh, crap, we have to do training now. Cammy, you take that on. That's going to be on your job description, right? So there's people figuring it out. And there's always this kumbaya moment when people come together because they realize they are not alone. I'm not the only one figuring this out for the very first time all by myself. And I do not have to reinvent any wheels because they've all been invented, folks.
Hi there. I'm sorry to break into the show right now, but if you're enjoying this show, if you are challenged, if you're inspired, if you're learning something, if you think that you're going to be able to get something out of this to put into your practice, do me a quick favor. Pause right now and just hit subscribe on your podcast player right now. It doesn't matter which one, just hit subscribe, because that way it'll make sure that you never miss an episode in the future. Thanks. Now back to the show.
So that's one thing. And then secondly, you asked about people moving into the field. So that's absolutely happening now too. I was just an hour ago reading a post and someone said, since the pandemic, instructional design has become a thing. And I was like, I've been an instructional designer for 25 years. It's been a thing for a long time, but there's a lot more visibility on that because e-learning has absolutely come into the spotlight, and we see more of a focus on digital learning solutions, and people recognize it's not going away. I mean, 20 years ago, if you tried to explain what you did as an instructional designer in the digital learning space, I got a lot of crossed eyes and, what?
Well, I'm wondering that, like, and disabuse me of this, if you will. Like, I wonder how many people go into the education field thinking, I feel like my calling is being an instructor, being a teacher, being an educator, without even really knowing, hey, wait, there is this opportunity. Because what the real passion may be is actually, I think I read it in your bio earlier, where it's a passion for effectively explaining something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or it's a passion for taking these complex, ideas and knowledge and packaging in a way that makes it accessible. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have done a lot of surveys of people in this field over the years. There's a lot of people who wanted to be teachers, journalists, maybe trained, right, as teachers, journalists, writers. We all kind of tend to, I don't know, conglomerate over in a certain part of the world. It is communicators generally, I think. And you have to have some inherent curiosity about things to do instructional design, I think. You got to be willing to ask stupid questions. I haven't done this in a while, but like content gathering, being the stupid guy in the room and just asking all those questions. It's really fascinating. You get to put on beginner mindset and learn about so many amazing things.
I think it's like a superpower. I think that so many people I've met don't use effectively, in that, just being the innocent in a room. I mean, you can create some pretty uncomfortable situations pretty fast, especially for, if obviously you don't want, that's never the intention, but it's just like, well, that's interesting. Tell me why you do that way. Just like a simple question like that can really, open up doors into creating new processes or like explaining something or whatever.
Right.
So
perhaps create a lot of internal debate on the subject matter expert team that you're interviewing.
Exactly.
Right, that's not how I do it.
So if somebody has stumbled into this, they picked up your book, and they're like, wow, I didn't know this is a thing. I want to learn more about it. For myself, I can remember a moment. I did a lot of training again in that former life and then one day it dawned on me, I'm like, I don't really want to be a trainer. Like, training isn't my thing. Performing is my thing. Really love performing, right? But then there's a clear distinction there. There's the jazz hands things, right? Which I love that. That was such a beautiful call out. Where in your book or in your life do you start to counsel people? Like, how do you start to actually wrap a passion? Identify the passion and then start to wrap a career around that. Like, it's an uncomfortable space to move through, right? Because sometimes there aren't labels that you can find.
Yeah, sure. All right. So a lot of people get into this by accident and they're tasked with a job, right? Like create a PowerPoint training out of this and then publish it in Storyliner. And to them, that is instructional design, And so first of all, let's acknowledge that every instructional designer in a room of 400, they will all define what they do differently. Sure. The job descriptions for all of those people are going to be totally different. Not going to be the same. Every company defines it differently and what they want. So the framework that I like to talk about with regard to this is pie. It's food-based.
Nice.
And yes, we all like pie. And it's really thinking about kind of the digital learning space, but more often than not these days, I think this applies to all of training. It's that there are essentially 4 key sectors that we have to be thinking about. So you stumble into instructional design and there might be a sweet spot that brought you into it. So let me take you through the 4 pieces of pie right now. All right.
Okay.
So first is learning. It's the learning sciences. It's understanding how adults learn. It's how to define instructional strategies. It's how to do curriculum design. It's writing assessment questions. It's Bloom's taxonomy. It's all the learning theory. Some people get super into that, and that's what brings you into this field. And, boom, you're an instructional designer, because that's in many graduate degree programs, that's what they are teaching, right? The learning sciences piece of it. But when you get into the digital learning space, it's the jazz hands, but it's jazz hands with intent and purpose. It's the creative piece of what we do when we are creating digital learning experiences, especially self-paced e-learning, that someone's sitting down in front of a computer. It better look good. It better be on brand. It should be telling a story. There should be some engaging interactivity. Maybe there's video, there's audio, there's this whole creative component. And when my first instructional design job, I was like, I get to write scripts and I get to go into a video studio and shoot video. I was 26 years old and I was so excited. It sounded so incredibly glamorous and creative. I was like, this is awesome. Right.
It's a mini Hollywood, really.
Absolutely. It can be for some people, and other people are listening to me and go, what? I've never done that. I just,
right.
Right. So there's lots of flavors of creativity within that. Then, of course, there's the technology piece, and technology for me was I don't want to know, but I'm an English major. I don't want to know.
Really? Oh, I'm surprised to hear that. I would think that you would cotton to that. You seem so.
I have learned over the years, and perhaps it's just because I've been doing this so long, my pie is really well-rounded right now. Like I know a lot about a lot of things, not deeply, but I have, wide generalist knowledge at this point. But the technology piece is, SCORM, it's XAPI, it's the tools, it's building in the tools, which, you might say, like, using Storyline probably transcends both the creative and the technology piece, right? It's LMSs, it's quality assurance testing, it's coding, it's programming, it's JavaScript, it's
server loads and seats,
I mean, you could go super deep into the technology of learning. And now with, AI and VR and AR, right? Like, there's a lot of slices to that piece of the pie. And then the last piece of the pie is the business piece of the pie. And most of what we're talking about are people who are focusing on corporate training, or at least that's been my focus, corporate training. But I think even if you're in higher ed, you got to think about the business side of it, which is serving the needs of the business, right? Laddering up to the corporate objectives and metrics and goals, but it's running your project like a business. You've got project management. How many instructional designers in the room have been a project manager too for every project that they've run, right? Those are business skills. That's not instructional design. Project managing does not equal instructional design.
Right.
But it often falls under that heading. And then, you might have to be a performance consultant. You're talking to key stakeholders within the organization, communicating. So there's a lot of business skills that fall into it. So this well-rounded learning professional in the L&D space, maybe knows some of those, all of those. And there's just so many different slices within each of those pieces of pie. So you get into this because you're into video and you're into learning and pedagogy. And for me, that was, I was like, oh, I want to be a teacher. I want to be a writer. Boom. Awesome. This is a great career. And now I've had to learn about the technology piece over the years and the business side. Here I am, a salesperson now, right? Like, I can talk you through a contract. And so, you might get into here with a little bit of a sweet spot, and where you go next is totally up to you. It's super exciting. There is no end to where L&D as a field can go. And you're seeing that with the explosion of all these disruptive technologies right now, right? You could go down that path for the next 6 years and you become an expert in that area. Or you could go over this direction.
Well, so let me, if I can interrupt for just a second, like, again, and this isn't about me, but I'm bringing in that past life again. I used to have lots of conversations about, or debates around, the benefits and cons of specializing versus generalists, right? So somebody who comes in and says, look, I'm learning adult cognition, I'm like, I can tell you everything about, Kirkpatrick and Bloom's and blah, blah, or someone like yourself now who's grown into a specialist, who's, 10,000 miles wide, half an inch deep, well, where would you find the balance? Where would you counsel people to say, should I have one or two of those muscles? Like, okay, learning to, like the actual creative side and the tech side, like I'm huge on, but the other two pieces, maybe not so much. Do I pick one or do I try to do all four? Like what's your counsel there?
It kind of depends, it depends on what floats your boat. Specialist, generalist, and then there's instructional designers. Absolutely. Can everyone see that the header under there? Yeah. Right. So I think I'm pretty much of a generalist at this point. Some people are going to have that more T-shaped skills model. Have you heard of that? Where you have like, generalists, all these skills across the top of the T, and then you develop some deep expertise. Maybe you're the LMS SCORM guy. Maybe you're getting into XAPI, but you have a good well-rounding on all these other areas. It probably is going to depend on the team that you're on. Are you a one-stop shop? Many people at many organizations, they are the training department.
And definitely like the resources you have available, right? Like if you're working for Salesforce and you've got, 300 other colleagues that you're working with, your ability to either specialize in something or really hone a particular aspect of this craft is probably much more likely than if you're at one of the new AI startups and you're a marketing department of one, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think, I was just reading an article about data maturity, learning analytics, and maturity models for learning analytics teams. So the Salesforce team is probably going to have a learning analytics scientist, right?
They're going to have a team of scientists.
Yeah, they're going to have a whole team of scientists. Whereas over here, you're the one person shop. You're looking at all the data and trying to make a sense of it. And you're the data analyst over here too. That falls under your many myriad job titles. So some of it's the kind of organization you're at. Some of it's what you're interested in as a human being. It depends.
So if you went to the core, ATD core, did anybody walk out of that room going, this ain't for me? Like, is there anybody who kind of discovers this and kind of, walks in for, a mile or two and then is just like, maybe not so much. Have you?
I haven't seen that.
I was wondering because it seems like one of these professions where it's like, because I love these four aspects that you put to it, it speaks to my personality where you kind of have the ability to kind of renew or at least find something new on a pretty regular basis. It stays interesting. It's got depth as well as breadth. What are and if you don't see people walking away, like, what are the challenges that they come to you with in that core meeting? Or it's like, what are the I don't knows that you want to help them get through?
Yeah, well, I think, so identify what's your strength, what's your sweet spot, what is it that makes you sing, what brought you into that, and really focus on that and get really good at that. I encourage people to do that. And then also identify what's your weakness. What's that thing that you kind of stick your fingers in your ears and go, la, 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 I don't want to know anything about that. And maybe there's a Band-Aid you have to peel off and go dive in a little bit. I think it is important. I think it's important, but maybe that's my own personal perspective, to have enough of that broad understanding, to know what you don't know about a lot of things, and then figure out who you can go to. And at some point in your career, you may decide you want to go down that path. I once, when I did the book launch in April for the second edition of Accidental Instructional Designer, I had a guest on who likened the L&D field, and I loved this image, to climbing a rock wall. So your career path is not going to be from point A up to point B over here. It's not a straight line. And she said, it's really, and I'm not a rock climber, but I've seen people rock climbing. You go up and then you go sideways, and then you might go here, and then you might have to belay down for a bit, and then you go back up. You can go all over this amazing rock face in this field and never be bored. I've been doing this for a long time. At some point in my career, I will be ready to retire. I'm not there yet, but you have to keep renewing yourself. Otherwise, we all do get a little bored. There's some natural career cycles and paths that we go in. I recently stumbled across this. It was like the 7-year career cycle S curve. And and
I'm not familiar. You've just, hey, you've thrown something on the table.
I'll talk you through it. So prior to my coming to Kineo, I always thought, oh, every 5 years or so, I get bored and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. At Kineo, I've had two full cycles. I was the head of our learning design team for 7 years, and now I've been in sales for 7 years. So clearly, if they say it's a 7-year cycle, I'm ready for the next thing.
So wait, can we ask, and you don't have to answer the question, like what was the impetus for the change? Was it just like I'm bored, or a new opportunity came up, or this was just
7 years ago? It was, I'm ready for the next thing. I'm ready for that next challenge. So if you are, I'm going to draw an S on this piece of paper, which maybe you'll see. Can you see it?
Kind of, sort of.
All right. So it's backwards for me. Okay. So you start your career. It's basically a competency to mastery cycle. So you start your career and you're learning for the first time, and it's super exciting. I can't do this because it's backwards.
Don't worry. Just walk us through.
Look at it here. I'll look at it. So, so you're going up the curve. You're learning everything. It's really exciting. You're like, this is the best thing. I'm so awesome at this. Or, I'm challenged. And then you get up somewhere around here, and this is kind of that sweet spot where you've probably been doing it for a few years, but you are so good at it. It's really awesome. And then you kind of start to come down. Yeah,
there's a plateau moment for a while.
You plateau and you go down because you've mastered it. You've mastered everything in that. And, so it's this competency to mastery curve that is a natural thing for us, for all of us human beings. And it probably for people who are like, Cammy's switching. Now she's going to switch her job again. I don't have to switch my job, but maybe I can find that next thing within what I'm doing. And the cool thing about being in L&D is you can find your next S curve super easily. I've been spending my day thinking about content analytics and accessibility and VPAT. Like those are things I had not stuck my, head into really deeply. So now I'm going a little deeper with that kind of stuff. And I just think there's so much on the L&D pie that we can get deep into that you can keep finding your next S curve is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I love it. So what I mean, what I want to ask is like, so what are the challenges that you've experienced? And, is it burnout? Is it, you kind of, you thought learning analytics was going to be exciting and you got into the weeds and you're like, I don't want to spend my day, in equations and data lakes and those kinds of things. Like, do you just kind of find those things and if you run up against a wall, you're able to either push through it or run around it, or like, how have you worked through I don't want to do this kind of stuff?
Gosh, you're asking a hard question. I think generally you kind of know, right? You either feel bored with it. You're like, this isn't my thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not that into this. In my role, I speak to a lot of people and people look to me for like, not all the answers, certainly, but where they want to hear what I have to say because then they can go research it more. So I get to point people in a lot of directions. So for me, I can learn 3 inches deep. I don't have to go 12 feet deep, which suits me. I'm not generalist at this point.
It's great. So talk to me about the role of mentors in this universe as well. So again, you go take us back to that ATD core session. What's your advice for individuals who are getting, they're fully in the instructional design universe, but they're kind of figuring out what they want to do. They're early career professionals. If I want to reach out to a Cammy Bean in the world, how do I do it?
How do you do it? I get that a lot. A lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. Will you be my mentor?
Rule number one, don't ever ask that question.
Because that said, I would love to mentor everyone. And I think look to the people who are out there talking and sharing and learn from them. Go speak to them at conferences. Ask. I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask. But many people will say like, I'm too busy, or I'm mentoring my own team, or I've got my own team I'm already mentoring. That said, you may find informal mentors along the way who, even if you don't ask them directly, may play a mentoring role for you just because of the way they put themselves out there in the world. So I guess I probably am that for people without even realizing it. And you may find people, I don't know, Dr. Ellen Wagner, I don't know if you know her, but she was kind of my informal mentor she's the one who came up with that pie metaphor, and I've totally run with it. So I always have to give Ellen Wagner credit for it. But she was a professor in instructional design. And back in the early 2000s, the debate was raging, as it still rages, is do you need a degree in instructional design or not? And there was Ellen Wagner, who was a professor in instructional design. And there's me going, I've been doing this for 10 years and I don't have a degree. I don't need one. And she was great and really supportive. And I'm a huge fan of hers. So, you find the people that you're fans of and follow them and stay connected to them.
And what you find as well, because you've kind of perfectly led me into my next question, where I wanted to go is, where would you counsel people, especially early career professionals? Would you counsel them to find a big company to work for and, learn the Salesforce way, or, learn the Tesla way, or whatever it is, or, find yourself up in a startup world where it's like, hey, you're going to be able to wear a lot of hats fast, and it's going to be a little stressful and this and that, but that's the fastest way to kind of get to that larger base of knowledge. I can see, personally, I can see both of them, but what's your usual answer?
Yeah,
there?
Well, so instructional design and training happen everywhere. Every company has some kind of a training department. I think it's really important to align what you do with the values that you have. So if what you're super passionate about is, climate change and preventing climate change, go find a job at World Wildlife Fund. Go find a job with the people who are solving that problem. Go work for the National Park Service. I've met many instructional designers who work for National Park Service. And those are the people, when I'm talking to them at conferences, I'm like, oh, you have a really cool job. Right?
Absolutely.
But if what you want is to, I don't know. I think it depends on what's floating your goat. I was going to say floating your boat. And I don't know if that view of like that probably feels like a luxury to people who are just getting started. Like, oh, I can go choose the organization I work for, but you kind of can. I mean, there's so many jobs out there in training and development. So I'd find an organization that you feel fits your values. That's important. Mm-hmm. Think about, are you the kind of person who needs a lot of structure and coaching on the job? In which case you're probably going to do better with a big team where someone's telling you what to do. Or are you the kind of person who likes to figure it out and,
ask for forgiveness, not permission.
Ask for forgiveness and not, and then a startup, where you're like doing it all and figuring it all out on your own. So you have to ask yourself some questions about that. And some people are probably I just want a job. I don't care where I get a job. And you do see a lot of teachers right now, especially coming out of the pandemic, people trying to get out of K through 12 and switching. Oh, instructional design, perfect fit. Mm-hmm. Maybe. Right. May or may not be a great fit for you. It really depends. Working with kids in a classroom is really different than sitting in front of your computer all day, doing, storyboards or writing a script or doing storyline development. So have a view for what it is that you're passionate about. I'll share a resource with you, Steve. It's that pie. I mean, I keep calling you Steve. Sorry, Ladek.
No worries.
It's the learning pie with all these different slices, and you kind of map out what you're passionate about and figure out where you want to grow your strengths. I'll share that as a resource because that can be kind of fun to look at.
Nice. We'll definitely put it in the podcast notes here for sure. And we'll also throw it up on LinkedIn and the other places we're broadcasting this right now. I want to take 5 more minutes of your time to talk about, I think, a part of the slice of the pie that most people, at least in the conversations I've had over the last 3 years, would maybe either back away from, or it's got a little bit of a black hole, and that's the business side, right? The business slice. Talk to me about, first of all, the importance of that. Second of all, are there any aha moments that you've had, now that you've really had to flex with that as somebody on the sales side? And any pointer for somebody who's like, no, look, I want to design learning. I don't want to have to deal with business KPIs. Like, tell me about those things.
Right. It doesn't seem like the twain shall ever meet, right? If you're sitting over in the creative slice of the pie.
Yeah, look, I'm an artist. I'm putting things together. Right. I'm making sure that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you don't have to speak the business. Like, if you want to just be doing graphics, you could be sitting on the graphics team on a great e-learning design development team, and you don't even have to talk to the customer. So that's one option.
Okay.
leave that off. Lead that off there. However, generally, even the graphic designer needs to understand business in the form of brand identity for an organization, right? When you're developing digital learning, it's all about brand. That's business, right? That's marketing. So that's business. I would start with thinking about being a consultant to an organization. And it's all about asking questions. That's the kind of the core skill in many ways. There's project management, of course. And often that's what many teams, the instructional designers by default are the project managers. So you have to learn those basic project management skills, which is managing a project on time and on budget. And even if you're internal within an organization and you're not tracking, like I'm a vendor, we're a vendor. We track our budgets very closely because it's all about, not paying you to build your e-learning for you at the end of the day.
Yeah, sure.
And, content, learning, design content, it's a small margin business. It's kind of like grocery stores out there. Nobody wants to pay for it, but they want the Whole Foods of training.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I digress. But thinking about your road into business. So it might be that project management, just understanding how to run a project and how to communicate that back to the stakeholders. But subject matter expert interviews, you are talking to someone within the business. So you have to speak not in instructional design terms, you have to speak in the language of the business in order to translate that into an effective learning experience. So those basic bits can get you started on that business piece, but I wouldn't get overwhelmed. I mean, I never in a million years would have, as I said, imagined myself as an instructional designer who leads sales. Or even talking business, right? I don't want to go to business school. That was the last thing ever on my mind. No way. Not that I want to go to business school now, but yeah. I don't know if I answered that question.
You did absolutely. On every single one of these conversations, I'm amazed at how quickly 35 minutes goes by here. Tie it in a bow for me. If, your second edition of your book's coming out, what do you see, over the next year, 2 years in the near future for the instructional design profession, and, things that somebody who may be interested in this, who's listening to this right now, or somebody who's already taken the decision, their kind of early career, anything that you would say, look, here's your first 2 steps, or this is a must do for your career?
Read my book. It'll get you grounded.
Nice.
It will. Someone said it's not a how-to book. It really isn't. I would say my book is kind of a intro 101 to the industry and what you're doing. Go out there and read. Julie Jerkson's book, Design for How People Learn. That's like got to be must on your list.
On my shelf. Absolutely.
Yeah, right. And she just had a new book came out. I just got it on Sunday.
Oh, nice.
Design the Elephant in the Room. It's about designing for behavior change. Anyways, amazing. Read, go out there, find books to read, like get really curious about the subject of instructional design. Think about what sparks you. What is it that gets you going every morning? And focus on that and have that be your inroad. Find a lot of great people to follow. There are many, many amazing people on LinkedIn, and I don't know if people are still on X anymore, Twitter.
550 million, according to the headlines today.
We used to all be out there. Anyways, everyone's out on social media sharing what they do, and you can find them and you can connect with them. But ask questions. Make sure the people that you're talking to know what they're talking about, because there's a lot of snake oil salesmen out there too.
Mm-hmm. Cammy Bean, this has been a delightful conversation. I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day. Other than picking up your book, you said people reach out to you on LinkedIn. What's your preferred way for people to raise their hand and say, will you be my mentor? No, I'm just playing.
Come on, bring it on. Follow me on LinkedIn. I do try to share a lot on LinkedIn about what I'm doing. Come see me. I'll be at DevLearn in, when is that? October?
And third week in October, I believe.
Third week in October in Vegas. Come hit us up in Vegas. I try to do a lot of these webinars, podcasts, that kind of thing. So come find me and I will be happy to do what I can.
Super cool. Thank you so much once again for being here. And I wish you a wonderful day there up in Littleton.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Ladek.
Thank you again for listening to the eLearn podcast here from OpenLMS. I just wanted to ask one more time, if you enjoyed this show, if you learned something, if you were inspired, if you were challenged, if you feel like, this is something you can take into your practice, please do me a favor. And right now on your podcast player, hit subscribe. That way you're never going to miss a future episode. Also, come over to elearnmagazine.com and subscribe there as well, because we have tons of great information about how to create killer online learning outcomes. Thanks.